Welcome back to Mama Genius Hub podcast. I'm really excited for this episode. If this is you've built a life others admire. Behind the filtered photos and the calendar chaos, something just feels off. The tension, the control, the moment your voice disappears, as if you ever said, it's not that bad, while secretly questioning your own sanity. You aren't alone. Lisa Johnson has walked that path, and now she helps women like you spot the red flags, navigate toxic relationships, and rebuild with clarity and power. You are not crazy. You are not weak, and you don't have to be stuck any longer. Let's dive in. Mamas, welcome to the Mama Genius Preneur podcast, where real stories spark real transformation for moms ready to bring their visions to life. I'm Michelle DeKaiser, a mom of three, entrepreneur, and your biggest cheerleader if you've ever felt pulled to create something bigger, whether it's a business, a book, or a movement, but also felt the weight of daily life slowing you down. You are not alone. In just 15 minutes, we'll dive into insights, strategies, and real stories for women like you. Let's bring your visions to life, starting now. Lisa Johnson is a co-founder of Been There, Got Out, a high-conflict divorce strategist, certified domestic violence advocate, and nationally recognized voice in the legal abuse recovery space. After navigating her own toxic divorce and making legal history, Lisa now coaches women facing high-conflict relationships and custody battles. Her work has helped pass laws, redefine domestic abuse to include coercive control, and transform the lives of women in situations that feel impossible. So if this is you, help is out there. Welcome to the stage, Lisa. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's such a hard topic and I'm so glad and so grateful that you have brought this out there to have others know that they're not alone. And so on that note, I kind of want you to tell us a little bit about your why or the story behind what led you in this direction.
Yeah, I was with my ex for 20 years. I had no idea that anything other than physical was actually abusive or unhealthy, and did to get a divorce, but it happened, and a lot's happened since then. And along the way, I learned that 1 in 2 people in abusive relationships doesn't even realize it. And that's why it's so important to get it out there. And domestic violence, again, it's not just physical. That's part of what coercive control is, all that invisible abuse. People tend not to take it seriously because there's no bruises. And so you've probably heard someone say something like, at least they didn't hit you. But emotional abuse in a lot of ways is a lot worse, because physical you can get away from, but emotional, even after you leave, that person's voice is still squatting between your ears, and it can take a really long time to get rid of. Even years and years pass, and you still will have these moments. Like a friend of mine was telling me the other day how she's going to get a new car, and they've been divorced for 11 years, and she could still hear her ex's voice being like, you don't know what you're doing, which is crazy because she's moved on in so many other ways. But anyway.
I agree so much, because I think about that in terms of the voice. It shapes that internal voice inside of you as well. And it's always about the stories that you're telling yourself. And so when you add on that abuse to then now transfer those stories into your mind, you're right, that it takes even longer for them to leave. And the worst part is we don't necessarily recognize that as abuse. And so I'm glad that you're here to get that word out there that, yes, this is abuse. And I just want to really dive into, now that we're starting to identify that, what are some of those red flags that, like you said, 1 in 2 people don't even know they're in an abusive relationship. So what are some of those red flags even being aware that this is happening?
First of all, domestic violence affects 1 in 3 women. That's crazy. If you think about being in a room, how many women, I mean, men are affected too, but a little less than women, are affected by it. And again, most of them, half of them don't even realize them. And that included me. And a lot of us feel like something is wrong. Coercive control is basically patterns of behavior where the person that you're with over time makes you feel like they're the authority and they want you to remain dependent on them. So one of the things to look for that's present in 99% of abusive relationships is financial abuse. And that can appear in many different forms. But in my own case, it was not knowing exactly what was going on with all of the money. So my ex owned a bunch of real estate properties, and he would have bills and things delivered to his sister's house. And it was always like, oh, we have this thing going on, and here's the tax forms, and my sister and I do our own thing, but you just need to sign here. And I wasn't really paying attention. And during the divorce, there's something called the discovery. All this stuff started coming out, and I realized, even though we had a joint account and I had my own account, there were so many hidden credit cards. And it's traumatizing when you realize that you spent 20 years with someone who's basically been deceiving you or doing something called lying by omission, where in their mind it's fine because they're not telling you, but then you don't have the conscious capacity to make an informed decision on, is this what I want or not? Because things are not shared with you. So that's really important. If you feel like you don't understand what's going on with the money and there's just stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, everything should be transparent. And so that's one of the big signs, I
Wow, I
think.
love how you say that, just the transparency in it. And then realizing that it is lying when it is omission to it. And just really putting those pieces together to like, why are you feeling uneasy? And a lot of it because you don't even know what's going on.
And that's something that happens over time where somebody else makes you feel like you're not as smart as they are. You don't have as good judgment as they do. My ex used to tease me because I was like, I backpacked around Europe, I'm hippy dippy. And he was like a few years older, but he was like, you don't make good decisions because you don't think deliberately. Like you're more flying by the seat of your pants. One of the things I loved about him was I thought he had really good judgment. And I trusted his judgment instead of trusting my own judgment. And I think that's something a lot of women do when we enter these partnerships, is we think, all right, that person's better than me at these things, so I'm not going to even question what they do ever. I'm just going to believe them. And I'm not saying that you should live a life where you're cynical and suspicious, but that if you ask questions and you feel like you're not getting the right answers and something feels off, pay attention.
I love how you just frame that right now, because it's not necessarily, like you said, like we're out questioning everything, but when you are realizing your own body that something doesn't feel right, or that you are just, that's when you start the question and you start to look and when you start paying attention to your body. And I want to point out too, though, a lot of times when we think about men and women differences, a lot of times they are more left brained and we are more right brained just naturally and stuff. And so a lot of times when we're making those comparisons as women, we might feel that way, but I love how you're bringing out the difference of like between that and then the extreme of the red flag, what to look for when they are domineering and they are really trying to be controlling with that. And financial control, is there any other types of controls that you want to point out besides financial control?
Yeah. So a lot of it is emotional abuse, where what they say about you makes you feel like you're not good enough. My partner, Chris, and I, who happens to be a man, work with women and men, but we have a lot of women who are highly successful professionals. And having been in these relationships, they get chipped away. Their identity gets chipped away. And one of our clients is a really amazing attorney. And when we met with her, actually, her sister dragged her to us. And when I say dragged, we do everything virtually. So it's not like she physically dragged her into her office, but she was an absolute, what we call a puddle. She was just like, oh, my ex is saying I'm not a good communicator. I'm thinking of giving up my job because we have this little child and I have to be there because my ex keeps messing up stuff. And we were just like, whoa. This woman used to be a litigator, taken in what her ex said and believed it about herself. And so our little hashtag is called From Puddle to Ninja. And it's that transformation of partially getting your ex's voice out of your head and making you realize you're a great communicator. You're an amazing litigator. Luckily, we've been working with her for a couple of years. She has not given up her job. She just won a major decision against her ex. She represented herself, which a lot of lawyers can't do, even though they're trained, because of the nature of the relationship that they've been dealing with. So it is really important to work on that voice in your head. We hear the term gaslighting all the time. And again, it sounds like, oh, I should know that something isn't true. But when you're with a person for a long time who you love, you trust their judgment. And I remember at the very end of my marriage, as we were starting the divorce process, my ex used to hold my hands and he would say it with me, Lisa, say, I'm an abuser. I'm an abuser. And I was like, what? But I kept thinking, I don't think I am. Instead of thinking, wait a second, he's the one who's done all kinds of crazy, chaotic things. He's probably trying to record me for some kind of custody battle. Luckily, I had the capacity to be like, no, I don't think I am. But I was seriously questioning myself, like, what if he's, even though
On
there's
that note, we'll be right back. Are you a mompreneur who feels a fire to create something bigger, a business, a movement, a message, but you don't want to do it alone? That's why I've created the Mama Genius Hub, a space where your vision is nurtured, your voice is heard, and your dreams grow alongside a supportive community. Inside the hub, you'll get bite-sized insights and strategies in 15-minute sessions. A community of like-minded moms who truly get it. Support to bring your vision to life without burnout. If ready to build your business and impact while staying true to yourself, join us today at connectingmamas.com. Your calling matters. Let's grow it together. And so when you're looking at now, we've identified, we went through some of the red flags, like all of a sudden you're like I can feel like the light bulbs going off in some women. What is that first step? What do you recommend? Where do they start?
I think that the hardest part is actually realizing what your rights are. So remember, you've been in this relationship where for whatever reason, and probably over time, that person has become the authority. And as you realize, okay, something is wrong, I don't want to continue living like this. And it takes an average of 7 to 9 times to get out of one of these relationships. So it is not easy. It's like you start coming out of the fog. And then it's really important to talk to a neutral person, like an attorney or a domestic violence advocate, to realize this is what the truth is. And this is not what's true. And it's creating fear in me because someone like your current partner or your ex is going to try to keep you in the relationship because that's that power and control that they've had over you and they don't want to let it go. And as soon as they sense that you're thinking about changing that dynamic, they'll go even harder. So a lot of women in particular during the divorce process will say, but my husband says this, or, if it's a same-sex marriage, but my wife says they're telling me this. And so they really need to seek out professionals who can say, I understand that you believe this, but actually by this state law or by this, that's unlikely. Because I think really, and this quote comes from a friend of ours who we interviewed, who's a bodyguard and runs a nonprofit dealing with domestic violence. He said an abuser's greatest tool is fear. And that fear is what keeps people, women in particular, stuck in these unhealthy relationships because they've been led to believe I cannot function on my own. Nobody else is ever going to love me. I'm never going to be able to afford to live on my own. Again, it's that dependence on that person. I'm never going to do better. So again, you need to get those neutral voice out of the cult of one to find out these are my legal rights, and then to get support from people, whether it's a therapist, domestic violence advocate, again, people who are trauma informed and understand domestic violence, because it's not just, oh, just leave. Why don't you just do this? Because that certainly doesn't work because your brain chemistry has been rewired. And friends and family often don't quite understand what's going on either because it's not.
I love that so much how you're saying get that outside neutral person, especially since each state is so different. It's really important to get someone in that state. Is that correct?
Yeah, in that state. But for us, my partner and I work with people all over the world. And we say the laws are different, but the issues are the same. Yes. So the things that the courts care about are generally the same all over the world. But women in particular live with this sense of dread. Like my ex is saying that if I don't do what they want, they're going to take the kids away. They're going to leave me homeless. They're going to make sure I have no money. So those things you don't need a lawyer to tell you. That's something actually Chris and I do a lot with. We call it the harsh New York reality check. But a lot of times it's not harsh because by laying out the foundations of things that courts actually care about, especially when it comes to custody and kids, people are like, oh, okay. All right. So these are the factors. And these are the things that my ex has been saying that I've been so scared of. Women in particular, right now, this day and age, there's tremendous anxiety, and many people take medication for anxiety. That is weaponized against many successful women because their exes or their husbands will say, if you try to leave me or if you think you're going to get the kids, I'm going to tell everybody how you've been on medication, you've been institutionalized. And also that keeps someone thinking, if somebody finds this out, they're going to take the kids away. That is absolutely not true.
That so much. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. So tell everyone how they can get a hold of you and if you have a free gift for the audience.
Okay, sure. So super easy to get a hold of me. It's beentheregotout.com. That's my website. We're all over social media. We have a YouTube channel, a podcast. Just look up Been There, Got Out. Our first book was called Been There, Got Out. And the next book's going to be called Been There, Got Out with a different subtitle, but very easy to reach. It's just my partner, Chris, and I, and we always answer.
And we're gonna put you backstage for one moment, give a quick recap of what just happened, because there was so much goodness in that. And it's really about getting that awareness to what is happening. So number one is realizing that your voice has been rewired inside your head from whatever has been happening. So that's the first step in that. And number two is that cohesive control, realizing that patterns of behavior, of what that authority that the spouse is trying to put onto you or another person. It could be a friend of yours or a sister or someone. And that a lot of times it comes in financial abuse in terms of hiding that or putting things in different places. And number three is that you need to trust your own judgment, right? Because it's, again, going back to listening to your body. It's not about having to be vigilant and fearful of everything. It's all of a sudden when you are starting to listen to your own body and saying something's wrong. And then is a time to start looking and discovering what that wrong feels like to you and where it's coming from. And that's when she's saying to really start to be vigilant about it. And then number four is really talking about that emotional abuse as well. Because bringing back to, yes, there's a physical abuse and domestic violence, but then also that emotional abuse of really chipping away at your whole brain chemistry and who you are. And it really does change who you are, which leads us really into number five, which is realizing your rights, but also that fear that has been installed into you by the other person and all the things that they're saying are not going to, that might be happening. And so it is good to get that neutral person outside to tell you what are the facts, what are things that can happen with the kids or things like that to really bring that forth. So I'm going to bring back Lisa to give her final takeaway.
Yes, and I forgot to say, you asked about the freebie. We do, I think the basis of everything is learning how to properly communicate with someone who is not logical. So we have a whole course. It's called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind. And there's a free seminar, like a little webinar on learning some tips. And we think it's funny because my partner is the game show host, where you can learn a little bit about that. But the final takeaway is the air is so much better on the other side. It's like you don't realize what kind of fog you've been living in until you get out and you're just like, I cannot believe that I was that person. And it's really scary, the thought of, oh my gosh, what if I'm the one breaking up the family? My kids are going to be destroyed. It's actually much better for your kids to role model what kind of relationship they should aim for rather than just settle for.
I love that. It's all about the kids watching what you do and being that role model and living in your own genius. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Lisa.
That's a wrap for today's episode, Mama. I hope you found something in these 15 minutes that sparked action towards your dreams. Remember, your purpose matters, your dreams are valid, and you are not alone. If today's conversation spoke to you, come join us at the Mama Genius Hub, where you'll find support, strategy, and sisterhood to turn your calling into real impact. Let's grow this together at connectingmamas.com. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. If this resonates with you, share it with another mom here who needs to hear this. We'll see you next time.